And since you don't have volume F with you today, I've got it up here on the board. For those online, this is in volume F, and it is on page 1705. It is by William Butler Yeats, and it is one of his best-known poems, probably. Can y'all see it in the classroom?
Can't do this.
Can't see the light? It's kind of glary. Okay. Let's see. Which one?
The first one.
Okay. This is for that. One person. Okay, let's read it together, okay? And we're entering into modernism now. This is modernism, modernist poetry. Okay. The goal is to, once again, we're going to see some things that sound like they mean one thing, but wow, they mean something very different. Okay? It's not going to necessarily mean what it sounds like. Okay, can I get someone? I'm going to get Ben to read this.
All right, then.
All right. Can you?
I don't like the camera.
That's okay. You're looking at this.
No worries, it doesn't really like you either.
Okay, but you can't hide behind your hand. That was really funny. Okay, and read loudly for the camera. Thank you.
Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the century cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loose upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed and everywhere. The ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming, hardly are those words out, when a vast image of I
At the Spiritus Mundi.
troubles my sight. Somewhere in sands of the desert, a shape with lion body and the head of a man. I gaze blank and pitiless at the sun, is moving its slow thighs, while all about it, real shadows of indignant desert birds. The darkness drops again, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle. And what rough beast, it's our come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born.
Excellent. Yes. Very good. Okay, and something that I want to point out in your reading that was right is that you didn't pause at the end of every line, because it's really painful when people pause at the end of every line. You got it right, that you pay attention, even in modernist poetry, you kind of pay attention to where the punctuation is, although at some point you're going to wind up with poetry that has no punctuation, all of that. But
You keep going.
okay.
You're fine.
Looks like it was falling down. Okay.
Nope.
Yes, but okay, first, let's talk about what the references are. That was a very good reading. Thank you. What is your major?
Communication.
Okay, very good. So, speech and all of that. That's good. Okay. Let's talk about what you recognize in this poem.
Okay, keep moving.
Sorry. Okay. What do you recognize in this poem? Emily. Oh, no, she's, yes, okay, sorry, I left it. What do you recognize? Yes. Okay, one continuous thought.
It seems to be a reference to the apocalypse.
The
second coming of Christ.
It seems like it's a reference to the second coming of Christ, right? Okay, because its title is The Second Coming, right? That kind of makes sense. Okay. So let's kind of read through here. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. Does that sound like the second coming, the apocalypse?
It's called the apocalypse?
Apocalypse, yes.
Really? I
Yeah.
only heard the rapture.
Oh, okay. Or the rapture,
I never
or
heard
The
of
apocalypse is like the end of the tribulation.
That's pretty cool. I never heard of it.
okay, the apocalypse is the end of the
I
tribulation.
think it's more towards that end. The apocalypse isn't really the rapture.
Oh, yeah, would be. I mean, it's a different thing, but it's all part of the end times. Yeah.
Huh, I didn't know. Okay.
Which is what is the? I need a theology major to tell me what the theological term for. Oh, eschaton. Eschatology.
Study of the end times?
The end times, yes.
It's
Eschatology.
eschatology, I think.
Eschatology.
As far as I know.
Oh my, okay, come on.
I'm not a theology
Have y'all
major, though.
taken like theology or intro to Christianity, or you haven't heard the term eschatology?
I've heard it. I don't know if it's right or
Okay,
not.
can you Google it? Are you Googling it for us?
I don't have a smartphone.
Oh, I need a,
It's a dumb phone.
Google ESCHAT. Oh, sorry. Okay, ESCHATON. Just try eschaton. I'm gonna need a, okay, can you pause that while we're doing this? Okay, I'm gonna grab some dry erase.
Okay.
Okay, and we're back. I feel like we need a commercial break or something. Yes, the eschaton or eschatology is the study of things related to the end of the world or the end of humankind, right? Okay, so that's what this seems like, the eschaton here, right? We've got everything is falling apart, that sort of thing. Now, we've got turning and turning in the widening gyre. The falcon cannot hear the falconer. I'm going to move, sorry.
Dadgummit.
Okay, I'll try to stay over here by the board. Tell me, what does it mean to turn and turn in a widening gyre, and what is the falcon doing? What do the first two lines of the poem mean? What do the first two lines of the poem? I mean, just literally, what's happening?
You're turning in a type of spiral.
In a spiral, yes, good. So, what does a falcon do? And what's a falconer?
It's a bird.
A falcon flies, and it's a bird. And does it fly straight or in circles?
Apparently it flies in circles.
What?
Does it fly in circles?
It flies in circles. And what is a falconer?
The man who holds the falcon.
Yes, he teaches the falcon how to hunt. So we have the falconer here, and he's gonna have really long arms. So he would normally like hold the falcon. Here's the little bird, and there's your little bird. Okay, and then he flies outward like this in bigger and bigger spirals, right? I mean, he can fly in a straight line too, but he circles outward, right, looking for prey, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, it's like, he's circling. Now, what does it mean that the falcon cannot hear? Why is it a wide? What is a gyre?
Is it a gyre? Isn't it a gyre?
Well, I always say gyre, but okay, gyre.
It's a spiral. It's water
It's a spiral.
spinning.
Okay, yes.
Spinning water.
Okay, I guess it is a gyre.
Spinning water.
Okay, so it's a gyre. That's fine. So it's the gyre, and it's like a vortex, or it gets bigger and bigger and bigger like this, because it's widening, and the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Why can't the falcon hear the falconer?
Is it too loud?
Then it's too far away.
It's flown too far away. What would this have to do, or how might it sound like the second coming? Who would the falcon be? Who would the falconer be?
Well,
Falconer
Christ is the
Christ.
falconer.
Pardon?
Falconer would be Christ.
The falconer would be Christ. And who is the falcon?
We are.
We are. We've gone farther and farther away from Christ, so we can't hear him anymore, and things fall apart. The center cannot hold, right? So everything starts falling apart. Anarchy is loosed upon the world. It does sound like the eschaton, right? The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. So it's like, the best lack all conviction, so maybe they're not able to create problems, or the best lack all, you've got people who are apathetic, and this is, that's all there is. The worst are full of passion and intensity. You've just got chaos, and it's an image of destruction, death, right? Because what is next here? Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. But now, think about something here. And this weird punctuation is just a typo. It's not going to let me fix it here. Okay, well there's not a weird, that just is italicizing Spiritus Mundi. The second coming, hardly are those words out when a vast image out of Spiritus Mundi. Do you know what Spiritus Mundi means? Okay, it's like the spirit of the world. Yeah, mundi, mundus, mundane, the world. It's kind of like, are you familiar if you've had psychology? Who's taking psychology? Some of you are taking that now. Jung's collective unconscious. Have you come across that? Okay. Okay. The Spiritus Mundi is like, or the Anima Mundi, it's the spirit of the world, It's sort of a spirit that runs through all humankind, where archetypes reside, archetypes like, I gave you the image of water. Tell me about water in a poem. What might water symbolize?
Life.
Life. Why would it symbolize life?
You need water to live.
You need water to live, yes. So that would be part of the collective unconscious. All cultures would probably associate water with life. Or they might associate it, it sometimes has like a dual meaning. You can also associate it with hurricanes, floods. It goes the other way as well. Water can be associated with life. It is also associated with death and destruction. It's a feminine, tends to be a feminine archetype, and so there's this sense that water, the feminine, is life-giving and can also be, if you wind up with Medea or some crazy image of a woman, the mad woman in the attic. Jane?
Did you say Medea?
Medea, yes. Are you familiar with the play?
Yes.
Like the woman that kills her children?
He's not talking
He's not talking about Medea. He's talking about definitely modern Medea.
Okay.
Not
Eschatology for theology people. Carl Jung and the collective unconscious. And then Medea, Medea, is an ancient Greek tragedy in which the woman Medea finds out that Jason, her husband, he decides to marry somebody else, so to get even with him, Medea kills her children. Yes. Yeah. It's a really horrific. Pardon?
Didn't she drown them?
I think she poisons them. Something like that. Yeah, because I think she sends a cloak to the new wife.
Yeah.
That's a poison cloak, and I think it.
You need to shoot it.
Okay, so it's horrible. It's a really awful thing. But okay, so the image of water can be life-giving or destructive, and tends to be associated with the feminine. It's also associated with the moon and the changing tides, and so it's uncertain and all of this. You could also talk about an archetype that all cultures tend to have, which is the archetype of the hero. Cultures all have a hero. They may be different in some ways, like one kind of person is a hero here, another kind of person is a hero there, but we all have heroes. So that's what that Spiritus Mundi is kind of like. Yates is drawing on that Spiritus Mundi that he says all cultures, all people are kind of connected, like that we're all connected, and we have these memories of things that we haven't experienced because we're connected to our ancestors and all of that. Now, knowing this much, and we get to Spiritus Mundi, which is not a Christian sort of thing. It isn't, it's not wrong, it's not anti-Christian to talk about archetypes. It's simply that the Spiritus Mundi is not a Christian theory. It's like it's not in the Bible. Okay, so when a vast image out of Spiritus Mundi troubles my sight, somewhere in sands of the desert, a shape with lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun, is moving its slow thighs. Okay, it has a lion body. It's the Sphinx, thank you, yes. The Sphinx, that was a traditional Christian image, right? We read all about it in the Gospel of Mark, right?
Yes.
No!
Trying to answer for you, so stop doing that.
No, there's no Sphinx in the Bible. No. Okay. Where is the Sphinx from?
Isn't it Egypt?
Egyptian. Thank you. Okay. Come on, guys. We've got to get our cultural
Yes.
stuff going
It is in
here. Okay, Google. Do you know what the Sphinx looks like?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Sphinx images. It's ugly?
Look at it, that's hideous.
Those are weird cats. That's not real Sphinx. That's not like the ancient Egyptian.
Do like pyramid with Sphinx.
There you go. Thank you.
That's just awful.
That's just really weird.
You have got no sense of humor.
Those cats are actually, they really are ugly.
There we go. What?
It's with an I, not a Y.
Oh, I spelled it wrong. Thank you. I spelled it wrong. Full-size image. That is the Sphinx of Egypt.
A
Okay.
full-size image.
Yeah, not very big.
Just like a head on a rock.
Let's try this one. It's Egyptian and it's still pretty small. Okay, but that's our Sphinx. Trying to make it go back. Okay, so this is what he's talking about. Do you remember anything? This is not part of biblical stuff, right? We're not. There we go. So this is what is moving its slow thighs, while all about it reel shadows of the indignant desert birds. And for the online people, I will try to remember to put a link to the image of the Sphinx. And I'll spell it right this time.
I videoed it.
Pardon?
I videoed it.
Oh, you video? Oh, good. Thank you. Okay. Now, think about what's going on here. What have you seen at the beginning? What is the image that we saw at the beginning that now we see? It's the same thing. Literally the same thing that's repeated now. We have a frame for the poem. Turning and turning in the winding gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. And now we're down here with a shape with a lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun, is moving its slow thighs, while all about it reel shadows of the indignant desert birds. What does it mean to reel?
To reel like. Almost so dizzy.
Okay, to turn in a circle, right? Did anything else turn in a circle? Wow, y'all are asleep. Okay, I'm turning the lights on.
Oh, the falcon did.
Thank you, the falcon did it. So we have two images. We have an image of the falcon that's turning in the gyre. And now we've got the desert birds that are also turning in the gyre. Or as Dr. Mitchell suggests, what is it? What is the song about standing outside the fire or turning them, turn it into a country song here? So, real shadows of the indignant desert birds. Now, okay, the darkness drops.
She's on my garden too.
Yes, I am.
Okay, I'm
Turning
trying. I don't see what that is.
Go ahead, sing. You're being
Turning inside the gyre? No, okay. So anyhow,
Yay.
you've got here two sets of gyres. You have two sets of this sort of thing, where you've got, let me see if I can do it right. Okay, you've got one gyre, okay, you've got this spiral motion that gets larger. And we've got the Sphinx that's coming. Now, it's moving its slow thighs. The darkness drops again, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep. This was published in the early 1900s. 20 centuries of stony sleep. How long is 20 centuries?
That's 2,000 years.
2,000 years. All right, we have 2,000 years. And 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle. What happened about 20 centuries before?
There was a baby born in a manger.
Yes, a baby was born in a manger, and
But
what?
like isn't the change in the dates like the before Christ and after death? So 20 centuries is like that period in between, or it's like right when they switched, like after the death.
Well, yes, and he's close to 2,000, so he's close enough that he's saying yes. So it's like Christ is coming. Christ came into the world 2,000 years before, right? It's about year zero or whatever. So, or Anno Domini is the year of our Lord, so it would be, yeah. So you've got 20 centuries from birth of Christ. And then he goes down here 2,000 years, and we've got the falcon. We've gotten farther and farther away. We have gotten farther and farther away, and so the gyre gets bigger and bigger and bigger, all the way down here. And the falcon turning is going on down here as well. More confusion, I think, that the falcon. And it's all down here. The falcon and the desert birds. So we've gotten so far away, 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle. And what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born? Now, what's coming in 2000? What does it sound like? What? Somebody said it, I think.
The beast.
The beast. Yes. What beast? It's in the poem.
The rough.
The Sphinx. Yes. The Sphinx, which is spelled with an I. Thank you. Sphinx. The Sphinx is coming. Now, it's like, I don't want to write on the thing. I don't want to do that.
That sounds smart,
I've
Lord.
done that before. A vast image out of Spiritus Mundi. Okay, so it's one of those archetypes, he says, that's coming. And it troubles my sight. Somewhere in the sands of the desert, a shape with a lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun, is moving its slow thighs. It's like it's waking up. It's moving its slow thighs, and so it's waking up. And it's slouching towards Bethlehem to be born. This is an Egyptian image. The Sphinx is not a biblical image. It's an Egyptian image. Yates had a theory. So it's not the second coming of Christ. It's not the second coming of Christ at all. Instead, what he has is this idea that every 2,000 years, the world reorders itself. That there's a new order every 2,000 years. But it's not a totally new order, it's a return to the previous order. And each 2,000 years takes up one gyre. And it starts out here, and it gets, and the opener, I mean, the falcon or the culture, this cultural habit is getting looser and looser till it falls apart, and another order takes over. So, in the year 0, we could say, we have the birth of Christ, which is the beginning of the Christian era, we could call it. And then it's going to fall apart at the year 2000 and be replaced with something that shares the characteristics of what preceded. And what preceded for Yeats was more of an Egyptian mathematical kind of order. Okay? So there's this order that is returning. And so this is like 2000 BC. And so it's, you know, this is that kind of Egyptian mathematical, it's shared because Egyptian, it's not exactly, it's not like Egypt's going to take over the world in the year 2000, but it's like the characteristics of that order. Because he says, these civilizations tend to last about 2,000 years, so Y2K would have been just really intense for him. So he says, in the year 2000, we're going to return to this. We're going to return to this order. It'll be the second coming of that order that preceded Christ. Now, why does he do all of this? Where is he getting all of this from? Yeats was raised to be an atheist, okay? He was raised to be an atheist. But you've got to understand, he was in a very Christian, it's a very Christian kind of culture. Right at the turn of the century in Ireland, he's an Irish poet, that's important. Yeats is Irish. Right at the turn of the century, if you don't know much of Irish history, you kind of need to know a little bit about what Yeats is doing. He's trying really hard to create a national poetry, an Irish poetry. Ireland had been colonized by the English. It was heavily oppressed, persecuted, whatever you want to call it. You had the Irish potato famine in the 1840s. The English came in and did things like they would take over people's land. They would kick people out of their homes. At various times in the 1800s, the English just came in, displaced the Irish Catholics, so that there may have been 90% of the Irish population would have been Catholic, but the English came in and left them with only about 5% of their land. They colonized the land with English people, so that then the Irish people had nothing to live on. So that when the Irish potato famine, what happened is that one year they planted potatoes, they woke up one morning, all of the vines were wilted, the potatoes didn't make, they couldn't eat anything. And the problem was that they did grow other crops, but those crops were grown for English export. They were like sharecroppers. They exported all the corn and the other stuff to England. The English didn't give them much help to sustain themselves. When the potato famine hit, that was all they lived on. That was pretty much, they had a one-crop subsistence. They lived on nothing but potatoes. And in the 1840s, when you had several years of that, I mean, the people were just horribly starved. So many people died. Like 500,000 people died. 500,000 people immigrated to the U.S. and other places like Australia. But they were just very, very oppressed. They didn't have the right to own land. They didn't have the right to own, much of anything. And so you wind up with this hostile tension that still you see it today. So early in the 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s, several poets, authors, playwrights, and people got together in Ireland, and they started the Irish nationalist movement in art. So you have people like William Butler Yeats, James Joyce, who wrote Ulysses and a bunch of short stories as well. Yeats wrote a bunch of plays. Lady Gregory wrote a bunch of plays. They started the Abbey Theater, and there was this protest to try to preserve Gaelic, which was their language. They tried so that the people would still speak Gaelic, which was fading away, and to preserve the traditions, the folk traditions, and to preserve their way of life. So, okay, that's how we get to Yeats, who is trying to create a national poetry. Just like the Greeks had Homer, the Romans had Virgil, the Aeneid, the Italians had Dante, the English have Milton and Shakespeare. So Yeats is like, okay, we need a national poetry. The problem is that Yeats was raised as an atheist. Okay, doesn't believe in God, but he's looking for something. So he studies and he searches and he has seances out in the countryside. I'm not kidding, he had seances out in the countryside trying to call up the Celtic gods, seeing if he could get in touch with somebody. And then he was also in love with this other Irish nationalist woman named Maud Gonne. Now Maud Gonne didn't want to marry him, and he asked her and proposed, and finally, he believed that she wouldn't marry him. So he proposed to her daughter. She turned him down, and finally he married this other woman, Georgie Hyde Lees, I think is her name. He marries her, and on their honeymoon, and I'm not sure if she does this to keep his attention or if this is for real, but he wrote a book called A Vision that's based on all the stuff that starts on their honeymoon. She starts doing something called automatic speaking. It's kind of like channeling for spirit, right? So she's channeling all this stuff on their honeymoon, and he takes dictation. It's like, well, actually, she started off automatic writing, and then she got writer's cramp or whatever, and then she switched to dictation, and he would write it down, and she would just say it. So he got all of this stuff, this system of the 2,000-year gyres. It has stuff to do with the phases of the moon. It's incredibly complicated, and scholars have gone back and studied how she was educated. Could she possibly have come up with something like this? And people debate whether she could have been smart enough to make this up or not. But long story short, he was looking for some kind of mythology. You've got the Greek gods for the Greek poetry. You've got the Roman gods for the Roman poetry. You have Christian gods, or God, we have God, in Dante's Inferno and in Milton's Paradise Lost. We have God, the Christian story. So he needs something for Ireland. So he's searching and searching, having all these seances and things, and he comes up with this 2,000-year gyre pattern. And so that's what he's talking about when he says the second coming. Now, he is in Ireland, though, which is strongly Catholic. There's no way on the planet he could not have known in depth the Christian vision. Okay? He knows what the Christian story is. So he says it's the second coming. And yes, he is writing with the sense that, people are going to think that's the second coming of Christ. And so that's why he knows about Bethlehem, and it's 2,000 years before. And his poetry will contain a lot of Christian imagery. But just like with Blake and the Lamb, Blake's not talking about it the same way that we would talk about Christ and the Lamb. He wants the lamb and the tiger. He's a dualist. Good and evil. Evil's not evil. You have to have it. It's necessary. Same sort of thing here. You go back and forth. You've got this back and forth in Yeats as well. One kind of order, another kind of order comes in. But he's looking at those Christian images, but using them for his own vision is the book that he's written to describe that order. You can also see in this poem, does it seem like a pleasant poem? Is it happy, and does it sound more like the lamb or the tiger to you? The tiger. That blood-dimmed tide is loosed. Yeah, it's creepy. And when a vast image out of Spiritus Mundi troubles my sight. Spiritus Mundi is huge. It encompasses all of humankind, but it's our subconscious, what's in our subconscious. And it's vast, and it's troubling. And you get a lion body in the head of a man. It's creepy. And that gaze that is as pitiless as the sun. He's writing poetry where he's using his own philosophy, but he's also writing about Ireland that has just been through it. I mean, Ireland has been tormented and persecuted and colonized. I mean, it's hard to think about that England colonized Ireland after Ireland was itself. You know, it's hard to keep that in mind. But they colonized all over the place, so colonize Ireland too. So they did this, and the Irish people are suffering, and they want to maintain their culture. I mean, we wouldn't like it if Texas said, you can't be Alabama anymore, you're going to be Texan and wear cowboy boots and, sing Yellow Rose of Texas all the time. We wouldn't like that. Or if they took my house away. I mean, think about if they took your house away and they stuck you in the storage shed out back. I mean, these people were living in horrible circumstances. And so, anyhow, that's kind of where he's coming from. It's that desperation that he sees the people going through. Some of his poetry is just pleasant and happy, but you can see that pain and suffering here. And then what do we do with it? So that's kind of, do you have questions or comments or thoughts? Okay, what I'm going to do before we stop, for next time, you need to look in, this is all in book F. It is in volume F. We are now in the last book. Everyone must bring this book on Wednesday. I cannot believe we are down to like 2 weeks of school. I mean, it's distressing. But we actually have covered the same things that we cover in my other classes. I mean, I was thinking, we're going to run out of days, but we haven't. We've still covered what we cover on a regular schedule.
We have one more test?
Pardon?
We have one more test.
Final exam, and it'll only be on Yates. It'll be Yates, Stevens, Eliot, and Faulkner's. I think we have to read that. I'm not sure what the date will be yet. Maybe early. There will probably be several times that'll be available because of online, so they're kind of like the last one, or this one we just did. For Stevens, I want you to read, okay? You definitely have to read The Idea of Order at Key West. It is on page 1905. The Idea of Order at Key West.
1905?
Yes. And that starts on 1905. And The Anecdote of the Jar, which is a really short one. The Idea of Order at Key West is a little longer. We are now into modern poetry. The Anecdote of a Jar, you're going to be saying, why is this a poem? But it's okay. Just read the words. There's a good possibility of a reading quiz on Wednesday. Read the words. I just want to make sure you read it.
What page is that?
That's page 1904 is Anecdote of the Jar. 1905 and 1906 is The Idea of Order at Key West. What I want you to do when you read it is see how you feel. It's the Dr. Phil time of the semester because we're into modernist poetry. It's weird. But just kind of go with it, try to understand it. Thank you.